Well, starting in about 1800 and going up through about the time of the Civil War, during peacetime, the U.S. government financed its operations through just two means. One was tariffs, and the other was the sale of public lands. So that's it. There were no other taxes, no other excise taxes. There's certainly no income tax, the very idea of which would have horrified everyone. But with the 20th century, there began to be a move for a progressive income tax, and the rationale for this was that the tariff was contributing to the monopoly problem. The tariff was viewed as being the enemy of the common man. So we'll get rid of the tariff or lower it dramatically and replace it with an income tax that's going to be paid only by rich people. You're never going to pay this tax, so don't worry about it. Now, what in fact happened was they did lower the tariff, they did introduce the income tax, and then in the 1920s they raised the tariff again. So it's what I warn people about when they say, well, I want this kind of tax or that kind of tax. You know, at the very least, abolish the first one permanently before you introduce anything else. I would rather just abolish, because they're always going to pull something like this. And incidentally, on the floor of Congress, there was somebody who warned that maybe the tax rate ought to be capped in the amendment at 10%, the 16th Amendment that became part of the Constitution, so that no one ever has to pay more than 10% of his income. And people laughed at that, said, it's never going to get to 10%. Come on, what are you, crazy? Whereas as soon as World War I came along, we had very, very substantial tax increases, so that in the 1920s, they were reducing the tax burden from tax rates that were in top marginal rates that were in the 70s, and then again later they were returned to the 70s, to the low 90s, in the 1960s, top marginal rates. This was something that was true all over the world, very, very high top marginal rates. That's why George Harrison wrote the song Taxman. 'Cause I'm the tax man. For the Beatles, there's 1 for you, 19 for me.